Rome burned for 6 days. Some said it was an accident. Others said the emperor watched and smiled. This is the story of Nero and the fire that changed Rome forever.
The gods have abandoned us. The city is falling.
Keep moving, scum!
They say the Emperor is dead.
The first sign was not the flames, it was the smell. A bitter, oily smoke creeping under the door, crawling along the floor like a living thing. I woke up coughing, my throat already raw, my eyes stinging before I even saw light. Outside, someone screamed a single word, over and over, like it could hold the city together. Fire. I threw on my tunic and ran to the street. The night air was hot, long, heavy, like the world had tilted closer to the sun. Downhill, toward the valley, the sky was bleeding orange. And then I saw it. A wall of flame rising near the Circus Maximus, whipping and snapping as if the fire had grown a mouth and was trying to eat the wind. It climbed awnings and wooden stalls, leaped from roof to roof, and turned the narrow streets into chimneys. People poured into the road with whatever they could carry, a child wrapped in a blanket, a basket of bread, a statue of a household god, a cage of birds that beat their wings in panic. Some ran barefoot, some ran with gold, some ran with nothing at all. A man shoved past me, his face soot black, eyes wide as if he had seen the underworld open. "It's everywhere," he rasped. "The city is burning. My name is Quintus Fabius Lento. I was a copyist, a man who wrote other men's words for a living. Not a senator, not a soldier, not a priest. Just a Roman with ink on his fingers." And that night, in the summer of 64, I watched Rome burn. People like to imagine ancient Rome as marble in triumph. They forget how much of it was wood. Most Romans did not live in palaces. They lived in insulae, tall apartment blocks built fast and cheap, stacked above narrow streets where sunlight struggled to reach the stones. Shops were packed with oil, cloth, and dry timber. Cooking fires burned day and night. Lamps flickered in every window. Rome was a tinderbox that pretended it wasn't. Even our firefighters, the vigils, could only do so much. They ran with hooks and buckets, breaking walls to make fire breaks, dragging people from smoke-filled stairways. They were brave, but bravery is small against a city-sized furnace. When the wind blew through the valleys, it turned alleys into funnels and carried sparks like curses. When panic came, the streets, already crowded, became traps. That night, the wind came first. It blew hard from the south, and the flames followed it like obedient soldiers. As the fire surged, we tried to fight it the way Romans always fought small fires. We formed lines with buckets. We ripped down awnings. We shouted orders like we were in a drill. But the fire was not small. It roared so loud it drowned out prayers. Soon the heat forced us back. Roof tiles cracked. Wooden beams snapped. A building groaned and collapsed, sending a shower of sparks into the street. And those sparks became new fires before they even landed. A woman near me clutched her infant and whispered, "Where is the emperor?" No one answered. To understand why that question mattered, you have to understand Nero. When Nero became emperor, he was young, barely out of boyhood. At first, people hoped. Rome had known cruel rulers and foolish ones. Perhaps this new prince would be different. For a time, it seemed he might be. The early years were guided by older hands. The philosopher Seneca, who wrote speeches like polished steel, and Burrus, the commander of the Praetorian Guard, who kept order with quiet force. Nero smiled. Nero granted favors. Nero spoke of mercy. And in public, the city tried to believe. But even in those early days, there was a hunger in him that had nothing to do with law or borders. Nero wanted to be seen, not as a ruler, as an artist. He loved the stage. He loved music. He loved poetry. He loved the moment when a crowd held its breath and then exploded into applause. Some emperors wanted to be feared. Nero wanted to be adored. At banquets, people whispered about how long he practiced with the lyre, about how he forced senators to sit through performances and clap until their hands ached, about how he spoke of Greece, of theaters, of becoming immortal through art. An emperor can command, my friend Gaius once said, but Nero wants to be loved. That's far more dangerous. I laughed then. I did not laugh after the fire. Nero did not climb to power alone. He was lifted, like a weapon, by his mother, Agrippina. In Rome, mothers were supposed to be shadows. Agrippina was a storm. She married the Emperor Claudius, placed her son beside the throne, and made sure every door opened for him. Some said Claudius died too conveniently. Some said Agrippina's ambition left fingerprints on everything. By the time Nero was proclaimed emperor, Agrippina expected to rule through him. For a while, she did. People said she sat behind curtains at meetings, listening, that she demanded to be seen beside him in public, as if her presence crowned him, that she reminded him gently, then sharply, who had made him. But Nero was not a child forever. As he grew older, his need for admiration grew stronger than his need for his mother. And in Rome, when two hungers collide, someone bleeds. Britannicus, Claudius's natural son, died young after a sudden illness at a feast. Agrippina's influence shrank, and whispers began to circle like vultures. Had Nero removed obstacles? Had the young emperor learned that in Rome, affection was useful, but fear was safer? I did not know. I only knew that the city felt tense, like a string pulled too tight. There was a night, years before the fire, when news ran through the city like spilled wine. Agrippina was dead. Some said it was an accident. Some said it was a shipwreck. Some said the sea had turned against her. But Rome did not believe in accidents among emperors. The story spread in fragments, as stories always do. A boat built to break apart, a sudden collapse, a mother swimming through black water toward the shore, surviving what should have killed her, and then soldiers arriving anyway, finishing what the sea had failed to do. I remember the way people spoke her name after that, not loudly, not with outrage, with caution, because if Nero could remove his own mother, what could he not remove? From that point on, a new kind of fear lived in Rome. Not the fear of invasion, the fear of listening walls, the fear that the city itself was learning to hold its tongue. By 64, Rome felt crowded with tension. There were festivals and games, yes. There was laughter in taverns. There were still bright mornings in the Forum, but the air felt charged. Taxes rose. Confiscations whispered their way through families. People complained about officials, about grain, about corruption. And Nero seemed to drift further from ordinary life. He built monuments. He sang. He raced chariots. He surrounded himself with men who praised him loudly and punished criticism quietly. Seneca's voice grew distant. Burrus died, and the palace felt colder afterward. New men stepped closer to Nero, men who thrived on suspicion. Rome had always lived with intrigue. But now intrigue wore the emperor's face. And then, one night in July, when the city was packed and dry and hot, the match finally found the oil. The fire began, they said, in the shops near the Circus Maximus. Wooden stalls, oils, spices, everything a flame could love. By the time I reached the slope above the valley, it was already beyond human hands. I ran back to my lodging, grabbed my mother, and tried to push toward higher ground. The streets clogged instantly, carts jammed. Animals screamed, people fought. A man swung a stick at anyone who tried to pass, shouting, "My family first." Another man knelt in the street, praying so loudly his voice cracked. Sparks fell like burning snow. I saw a balcony collapse. A body disappeared beneath it with a sound like wet cloth. No one stopped. When your city becomes a furnace, kindness is a luxury. We tried to reach the river. The Tiber was wide, and water meant hope. But the riverbanks filled with terrified crowds, and boats overturned as people surged toward them. Smoke drifted over the water, turning the moon into a sickly coin. Somewhere behind us, a temple roof caught fire. The flames lit the statues of the gods as if the gods themselves were burning. My mother clutched my arm. "Quintus," she said, voice shaking, "this isn't an accident." I wanted to argue. I wanted to believe fire was just fire. But then I saw something that made my skin go cold. Men with torches, moving against the flow of fleeing people. They were not panicked. They were calm. One of them struck a doorframe with his torch and stepped back as the wood caught. Another threw something, oil perhaps, into a shop and watched it flare. A citizen shouted, "Stop! You're killing us!" The torchbearer turned and shouted back, "Orders!" Orders? From whom? In the chaos, the men vanished like shadows, swallowed by smoke. But the word remained, echoing in my skull. Orders. We spent that first night running, then stopping, then running again. At one corner, a squad of vigiles formed a line, faces wrapped in wet cloth. A captain shouted for people to move back while his men swung hooks into a burning wall, trying to pull it down. For a moment, hope rose in my chest. If the wall fell, the fire might slow. Then soldiers arrived, not vigils, not neighbors, soldiers. They pushed into the street with clubs and short swords, driving everyone away, including the firefighters. "Leave it?" One of them barked. The vigil's captain protested. "If we cut this building, we stop the spread." The soldier leaned close, and I heard the words that turned my blood to ice. "By order. Leave it?" The captain's eyes flashed with fury. Then he swallowed it, because a Roman in uniform learns quickly when obedience becomes survival. As we were forced back, I saw the soldiers smash a water cart so it spilled uselessly into the street. A man screamed at them and was struck down. I do not know if those soldiers were corrupt, bribed, or simply confused. I only know what it looked like. As if someone wanted the fire to keep breathing. By dawn, Rome was a city of smoke. Ash coated our hair and skin. The sun rose as a red smear behind the haze. Rumors moved faster than flames. Some said Nero was in Antium, his seaside villa, when the fire began. Others said he returned at once, furious, and opened public buildings and gardens to shelter the homeless. Some insisted he organized relief and brought food, lowering grain prices, ordering tents raised in open spaces. And yes, some said he watched the fire from a private tower and sang of the fall of Troy, his voice rising above the screams like theater. Was it true? In Rome, truth is often less powerful than what people are ready to believe. And Rome was ready to believe the worst. Because as the fire raged, it did not behave like a natural disaster. It behaved like a siege. When one district burned out, the flames seemed to leap to another. When people tried to form bucket lines, sudden new fires erupted behind them. When desperate citizens tried to tear down buildings to create fire breaks, armed men drove them away. I saw it with my own eyes, a group of men smashing through a wall to stop the spread, only to be chased off by soldiers with clubs. "Leave it?" the soldiers shouted. By order. That word again. Orders. The city burned for 6 days. 6 days of choking air. 6 days of running until your legs turned numb. 6 days of watching familiar streets vanish behind curtains of flame. And when it finally seemed to die, it returned. A second fire broke out, fiercer than the first. At that point, many stopped calling it misfortune. They called it a plan. On the 4th day, we found shelter in the open, on higher ground where the wind was kinder. Thousands of us gathered in parks, on steps, in fields outside the densest streets. Some brought blankets. Many brought nothing but exhaustion. Every hour, refugees arrived with new stories. My husband is trapped. Our building fell. The shops at the Forum are gone. The temples are burning. The guards won't let us go back. At night, the city glowed like a forge. You could see fire reflected in the clouds, and the smoke turned the stars into ghosts. On the 6th day, the flames finally weakened. People began to breathe again, as if waking from drowning. And then, like a cruel joke, the fire returned. A second blaze broke out in another part of the city. Some said it started near warehouses. Some said it began on an estate connected to imperial officials. I do not know where it began. I only know what it felt like when we saw orange light again. A woman near me collapsed to her knees and laughed, thin, broken laughter. A man punched the ground until his knuckles bled. My mother whispered, "This city is cursed." By the time the second fire ended, Rome was a map of wounds. When the smoke finally thinned, what remained did not look like Rome. It looked like the bones of Rome. Blackened pillars stood like teeth. Walls were scorched and cracked. In some places, the heat had melted metal and turned glass into puddles. People wandered through ash searching for anything recognizable. A woman dug with bare hands until her nails split, screaming a name. A man held a charred key and stared at it as if it could unlock what he had lost. The smell was the worst. Not only smoke, not only burnt wood, but the sweet, sick stench of things you do not want to name. Families searched for bodies. Sometimes they found them. Sometimes they found nothing at all, only empty spaces where homes had stood. Of the 14 districts of Rome, only a few were untouched. Whole neighborhoods were erased. Temples, homes, markets, archives, gone. In the streets, people argued about numbers and blame. How many dead? How many homeless? How many days before hunger returns? And above it all, one question hovered like smoke. Who benefits? Soon a proclamation went out. Rome would be rebuilt. Wider streets. More space between buildings. Limits on wooden beams. New rules about walls, porticos, access to water. On paper, it sounded wise. But to the homeless, it sounded like a joke. Because rebuilding costs money. And the money always comes from someone. Tax collectors returned with cold eyes. Officials spoke about the treasury, about necessity, about restoring Rome. Yet the shelters were still crowded. The food lines were still long. Children still cried from hunger in the night. And then people began to notice something else. Whole sections of land were being marked and fenced. Not for public housing. Not for temples. Not for the people. For the emperor's vision. They called it the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. A palace of gardens and artificial lakes, of gilded walls and painted ceilings, of luxury so obscene that even senators swallowed their disgust when speaking of it. To be fair, Nero also introduced building codes after the fire. Streets were widened. Certain materials were restricted. Water supplies were improved. Rome would, in time, become safer. But safety does not erase suspicion. Because while ordinary Romans slept in crowded shelters and begged for bread, Nero's workers marked off huge swaths of land for his dream. "Look," my friend Gaius whispered one evening, pointing beyond a temporary fence. "He's building it right where we used to live." We stood on a hill of rubble where my neighbor's insula had once stood. Under the moon, the city looked like a battlefield. Why would an emperor need that much? I asked. Gaius's laugh was dry. Because he thinks Rome is a stage, and he is the star. People began to speak Nero's name the way you speak the name of a sickness. Not openly, not unless you wanted trouble, but in doorways, in whispers, in the dark. And in those whispers, one question returned again and again. Did Nero light the fire to clear space? No one could prove it. But in Rome, proof is not required for hatred to grow. Then the arrests began, not of senators, not of officials, not of the men with torches we had seen, of Christians. They were still a small group then. Some Romans thought of them as a strange sect, profusing the old gods, meeting in secret, speaking of a crucified king. Others accused them of darker things, because rumor always crawls toward the grotesque. I had met a Christian once, a quiet man named Justus who repaired sandals near the market. He spoke little, worked carefully, and when my mother was sick one winter, he left a bundle of dried herbs at our door without asking for payment. He never insulted the gods. He never shouted in the street. He simply lived differently. When the official word spread that Christians had started the fire, justice vanished. I asked around. People avoided my eyes. Finally, an old woman whispered, "They took him last night, taken, like a thief, like an animal." The crowd wanted certainty, and the state offered certainty wrapped in chains. A herald shouted the accusation like a verdict. People listened. Some nodded. Some looked uncertain. Some looked relieved, because blame is a kind of comfort. If the fire had a culprit, then the world still made sense. Soon, men and women were dragged away. Some were neighbors I had never noticed. Others were strangers. The crowd watched with a mixture of curiosity and hunger. Not hunger for food, hunger for a story where someone deserved what happened. Then came the punishments. They were not quiet, they were public. In the imperial gardens, people whispered that Christians were covered in animal skins and torn apart by dogs, that others were crucified, that some were used as living torches, burned to light the night. I did not witness every horror with my own eyes, but I saw enough. One evening, I stood on a street near the gardens, and the night sky flickered, not with stars, with flame. I smelled burning hair. I heard screams that did not sound like politics or war. They sounded like pure human pain. A group of citizens stood nearby, watching like they were at a spectacle. Some looked sick. Some looked fascinated. Some looked satisfied, as if pain was payment. My mother crossed herself, half prayer, half terror. "Is this justice?" she whispered. I could not answer, because I did not know if those people had anything to do with the fire. And I knew that Rome that claimed to be civilized, was capable of cruelty that felt like madness. After the fire, Nero's performances became more frequent. Or maybe I only noticed them more, because now everything he did felt like smoke in the lungs. He held games, he held shows. He sang. Some said he was trying to restore morale. Some said he was trying to drown suspicion in applause. In the streets, people began to make a dangerous joke. Rome burned and Nero played. Even if it wasn't true, it spread because it fit the shape of him. Nero, who loved art more than restraint. Nero, who wanted to be remembered not for governing, but for being magnificent. Nero, who seemed to confuse admiration with salvation. And the more the city whispered, the more Nero changed. You could feel it in the atmosphere, like a sky before lightning. Spies multiplied, accusations rose, friends became cautious, words became dangerous. Even Seneca, once his trusted advisor, began to fade from public view, as if distance could protect him from an emperor's suspicion. In Rome, it rarely does. In 65, a conspiracy was uncovered, the Pisonian conspiracy. Men of rank, poets, soldiers, senators, all accused of planning to kill Nero. Some were guilty, some were not. In times like these, guilt is often decided by convenience. What mattered was the result. Nero became convinced that everyone was a potential assassin. The punishment was relentless. Executions, forced suicides, confiscations. Seneca was ordered to die. The philosopher who had once guided Nero's early reign opened his veins and tried to meet death with dignity. I remember hearing the news and feeling a strange hollowness. If even Seneca, the man who helped shape the emperor, could be discarded, then no one was safe. The empire began to feel like a palace built on sand, trembling with every footstep. Taxes rose. More money was demanded. More gold was pulled from provinces already strained. And somewhere under all of it, the fire of 64 still burned, quiet, invisible, but present. Because the city had not forgotten. Nero did not fall the day Rome burned, but the fire changed something essential. Before the fire, Nero was strange, indulgent, theatrical, yet still tolerated, even enjoyed by some. After the fire, Nero became a symbol, a rumor with a crown, a question that would not die. Did he burn Rome? Did he blame innocents? Did he rebuild for himself? Years passed. Rebellions stirred. In distant provinces, generals began to think the unthinkable. In 68, the Senate declared Nero a public enemy. His guards abandoned him. His friends fled. The applause he had craved all his life vanished like smoke. In the end, the emperor who wanted the world to love him died alone, hunted in his own city. They say his last words were theatrical even then. "What an artist dies in me." Maybe he said it. Maybe Rome invented it. Either way, it fit. Sometimes, even now, I pick up a handful of dust from a street corner and let it run through my fingers. It is easy to forget how quickly a world can become ash, how quickly power can become rumor, how quickly a city can become a question. When I close my eyes, I still see the orange sky. I still smell the smoke that crawled under the door. I still hear the crack of beams collapsing like bones. And I still hear that word, spoken by torchbearers in the chaos, spoken by soldiers pushing us back from fire breaks. Orders! Maybe Nero gave them. Maybe someone else did. Maybe Rome simply needed a villain, and Nero was the easiest shape for it. History is not always a clean verdict, but it is a warning. Rome believed itself eternal. Then it watched itself burn. And whether Nero lit the match or not, the fire exposed what Rome truly was. A city of wood beneath a mask of marble. This has been Nero and the Burning of Rome, a survivor's account. If you want the next story brought to life, tell us in the comments. Which emperor's secret should we uncover next? Which myth should we step into? Because in the Empire of Myths, the past is never finished. It is still burning somewhere in the dark.